title this morning is called The Good Old Days. The good old days is a phrase commonly used and meant as a reflection on a past period of time that one viewed as perhaps better or superior to this present moment. Someone might say, for example, do you remember the good old days when we would just hang out at the corner store eating ice cream and drinking soda pop? Well, in truth, there's no reason why every day can't be a good day, a good old day, and every succeeding day thereafter be better and better. The good old days that we're talking about today are the good days that we are presently building for all our good days tomorrow. Not the days of yesterday, but the greater yet to be, creating our future today. Ernest Holmes wrote, should we learn to contemplate those things that are desirable and to forget the rest, we would soon overcome fear through faith. Both are mental. Let us learn to reverse the thoughts of fear and transmute them into faith. And likewise, if we learn to contemplate those things that are desirable to us, for us, in all areas of our life, we would soon overcome any and all obstacles and lean into the life that we imagine. Let's take our health, for example. Good health does not always come from medicine or good foods or exercise. It most often accompanies a state of mind held in peace, a state of heart beating peacefully. A mental equivalent held in mind takes after its kind. A friend of ours, a reverend friend of ours in this teaching, is commonly known to say this to people: everywhere you look, you see what you're looking for. So very true, Reverend David Alt. This same thing is true for our age. Did you know that there is such a thing as your chronological age and your biological age? Perhaps some of you did. I see a few nods out there. I didn't till this week. But the director of the Institute for Successful Longevity at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida, which I also didn't know there was such a thing as an Institute for Successful Longevity, but good to know, says chronological age is the number of years you have lived in this world. Biological age is the actual age of your body systems, organs, and cells. It's the rate at which your body has been aging over what we call time. He didn't say what we call time. I'm saying that because you're going to hear more about that time element soon. So this week I took a test, and the test was called, How Old Are You Really? And it really got me thinking. It was in the AARP magazine, and one area that they reflected upon in the article with regard to aging is what they called perceived stress. And I thought, ooh, that's a good one for us. Perceived has to do with that mental idea, our thinking. Senior research fellow at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., actually looks at the factors that speed up biological aging. They say that there is a link between stress and aging. The key is what they call perceived stress, meaning what we think about stress and how we face it matters, since it affects how we age. Ernest Holmes, our founder in Science of Mind, wrote, "Whatever your years, there is in every being's heart the love of wonder, the undaunted challenge of events, the unfailing childlike appetite for what's next, and the joy found in the game of life." He writes, "You are as young as your faith, as old as your fear, as young as your hope, as old as your despair. So long, in the central place of every heart, there is a recording chamber. So long as it receives messages of beauty, cheer, and courage, so long are you young." He goes on to say, "When the wires are all down and your heart is covered with the snows of pessimism and the ice of cynicism, then, and only then, are you grown old." So we don't grow old by living a certain number of years. We grow old by deserting our ideals for life. Aligning our thought with ideals of wholeness and peace naturally heals blockages, allowing an experience of youthful joy. Just what we all want.
Absolutely. I do. I kind of chuckled on your little appetite and aptitude, and I thought that's kind of unique that our aptitude for life is conditioned by our appetite to receive that. That's pretty good.
No mistakes in God.
That's right. Well, I actually have to admit that I frequently have aches and pains and creaky joints and arthritis and less hair on my head, but fortunately I have more hair in my ears and nose to make up for it. But I rarely have cobwebs in my head. I read a long time ago that an active mind will rarely or be less likely to fail as time goes by. And so since that time I've challenged myself, or challenged my brain anyway, to regularly play puzzles and read challenging books. And I have refrained from political and mean-spirited conversations, and I have found that my mind is predominantly focused on positive thought. And I like that. And therefore I tend to anticipate positive outcomes. So I look forward to the future. And I have fortunately found that most people here do the same thing. So it's a nice place to be because we share with that together. Dr. Joseph Mercy says, "You grow old when you lose interest in life, when you cease to dream, when you cease to hunger after new truths and search for new worlds to conquer. When your mind is open to new ideas, new interests, and when you raise the curtain and let the sunshine and inspiration of new thoughts of life and the universe, you will be young and vital." He suggests that we try to learn something new every moment of the day. He says you will find your mind will always be young if you do so. He says realize that you are on an endless journey, a series of important steps in the ceaseless, tireless, endless ocean of life. Ralph Waldo Emerson pretty much agrees with him. He says, "This old age ought not to creep on a human mind. In nature, every moment is new. The past is always swallowed and forgotten, and coming only is sacred. Nothing is secure but life, transition, and the energizing spirit." That's a good affirmation, isn't it? I claim that for myself. Because we're living in a state of mind, or a state of form and physical substance, time and space not only are important to us, they're really essential for understanding our relationship with life and all of life that is around us. Age, based on time, is tied into a worldview or a perspective of limitation, because all things must begin and eventually come to an end if they are in form. Time is quantifiable, measurable, because it is based on measured parameters, numbers that don't change, and therefore measured time is stagnant because it is in form. Cannot expand beyond those designated parameters that we have set for it. And in our humanness, this is convenient because we can plan our days and activities accordingly. However, in our spiritual nature, time has no relevance. In fact, we could say that time is an illusion, and we quite often do say that time and space are illusions in our spiritual awareness. As spiritual beings, we are constantly growing and expanding. As spiritual beings living in a human experience, when we tie ourselves to illusory passing of time, we are tying ourselves to a stagnant state of form and substance, and not to spiritual principle. Aging is not a spiritual principle. Time is not passing, time is not moving, but we are. Christian Larson was a great influence on Ernest Holmes, and when Ernest Holmes first started teaching and studying New Thought, he was in Christian Science. And Christian Larson was one of the ones who convinced him or empowered him to move out of Christian Science and into a universal New Thought idea. And Christian Larson wrote a book entitled The Pathway of Roses. It's wonderful. I've read it a couple of times. It's a great book, and I absolutely suggest that you find it sometime and read it. He says, when man fully realizes that he is living now, in the great eternal now, that he is already in eternity, he shall know age no more. Man grows old because he believes in the passing of time. The passing of time. He believes that he is living in a world where time is ever growing and going, and that he is going with it to the grave. He is conscious of the passing of years and believes that the further he goes with the years, the more years will be added to the burden of his life. He therefore thinks of himself as so many years old. But here he is mistaken. When man becomes conscious of the fact that time is standing still, and that he is moving, and that the further on he moves, the larger his life becomes, he will have attained the secret of that life that is ever young. The truth is that when man realizes that he is ever moving onward, he will know that he is growing into life, and he will never pass into age so long as he is growing into life. When this truth is realized, you will consciously feel the stillness and the calm of the eternity that forever is. You will no longer feel that you are passing on and on to some undesired end where the adverse forces will rob you of the life you were here to live. You will no longer think of death or those periods of inability that have formerly preceded death. And here's the important part. These mean nothing to you. They do not belong to your life. You are living in eternity. Time is not adding years to your life. Your life is already eternal, and that which is eternal cannot be measured by years.
Woo! Soak that in for a moment. There are a lot of really great New Thought leaders around the same time that our founder Ernest Holmes came up, and another one that was influential in Holmes' life is Ralph Waldo Trine. And he was a New Thought pioneer. He wrote the bestseller In Tune with the Infinite, another book that we recommend you read. While Trine isn't as well known as many of the New Thought leaders, he was influential over many of them. I already told you he was influential in the life of Ernest Holmes and our teaching. and also Mahatma Gandhi. Trine is credited with the phrase, the golden thread that runs through all life, along with promotion of the idea that constructive thought directly influences health, wealth, and happiness. Trine had an interest in Eastern religions. Eventually, he lived in a retirement home for religious professionals in California, and he spent his last days, months, years planting and tending fruit trees on the property until he died a peaceful death at the age of 91. He lived his word. In his books, he often posed questions, and I have a couple of those for us to consider, with his answer to them, of course. He starts with, would you remain always young, and would you carry all the joyousness and buoyancy of youth into your mature years? If you would, then have care concerning but one thing, how you live in your thought world, or thought world. Children are great at living this and at getting this, and somehow it gets schooled out of us along the way, but it doesn't have to. So in my classroom of third graders, we have a large carpeted area where we sit down and when we're going to do reading, when we're going to work on reading. And this one day, the lesson was about cause and effect ideas in the stories. And the kids just were not relating to it at all. They couldn't find the causes or the effects. And then when I'd try to guide them to those ideas in the story, they'd be like, oh, okay. Not really getting it. And I thought, well, something has to change here, because they need to learn cause and effect. So what can I do? I can make it relatable. So I started giving them ideas and having them come up with ideas in their own lives. And they came up with some great ones in their own life. One child said, oh, I remember one day the alarm went off late at our house, so I was late to school that day. And I was like, you guys are getting it. That's awesome. Good for you. Well, they were so enthusiastic that they kept coming up with more and more cause and effect ideas in their life. And some of them were really funny. So we get a little off task, and we were laughing quite a bit. And I eventually had to say, okay, calm down a little. We're laughing, and that's a good thing. And I like that we're laughing and learning. But I've let us get a little bit off task here for what we need to understand. And I guess it's because I like to be like a child sometimes too. I like to have fun with whatever I'm doing in life. Well, the whole area erupted. They all talked over each other all at once, which is very uncommon. They usually raise their hand nicely. But they all started talking, and they were telling me, that's a really good thing, you know, good for you, because that will keep you young. And one wise individual said, you know what, some people are old only because they don't have any more adventures in life. And I thought, wow, you guys are smart. Keep that energy, keep that knowledge within you. We too, each one of us, know the importance of our thinking, of keeping the joyousness, the adventure, the buoyancy alive in our thinking. So Trine goes on with this question. And would you have in your body all the elasticity, all the strength, all the beauty of your younger years? Then live these in your mind. Make no room for unclean thought, and you will externalize them in your body. In the degree that you keep young in thought, you will remain young in body. And you will find that your body will in turn aid your mind, for the body helps mind the same way mind helps body. Well, unfortunately for some of us, me included, I've harbored these unclean thoughts that he speaks of out over the years, and they've already externalized. But it's never too late to operate within the law, to keep young in thought, to remain young in body. And I think our young thoughts attract a youthful-like life and attitude, not just body and mind. So an example in my life was a parent conference I had with a father of one of my students, and we were talking about the different ideas in schooling and what we have to do and what the laws are, and we seemed to have a lot of similarities, and he said, you know, I think we agree on a lot of these philosophies for the schools because we're about the same age, and he had already told me his age. So I just smiled and gave a little nod, and the conference went on. And inwardly, I took the win, because in truth, there's a 20-year gap. So I had him fooled, and I think it's being around those kids. Ernest Holmes gives us the secret. He says we must enter into the spirit of life, into the joy of living, into the usefulness of creative endeavor. No one need grow old in attitude if he has faith, purpose, and enthusiasm. If we feel, then, that we are simply onlookers and not participants in this game of life, we should rediscover the youthful spirit of the childlike joy which gave to us the energy, happiness, security, and faith we had as children. And so we say to you, let's enjoy creating and living our good old days. And so it is.